Okay, everybody. It's time to get started, and we are striving to start on time this time. Rolling is one straight up. So we're ready for our next keynote. If we have anyone outside, please come on in if you will. Thank you very much in advance. So here we go. Our next speaker, Mr. Scott Pierre. He's the Supervisory Special Agent Cyber Squad for the FBI. He's going to talk to us, and that's good stuff. And I've already talked to him, and you know you got a view of FBI, and this is a nice guy. So I like this fellow. So I think he's going to be good. So if you will, let's welcome Mr. Scott Pierre.
Thank you, guys. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so we do cyber threat briefings pretty regularly. This one is going to be tailored specifically towards the energy sector. But if you guys have questions, it's usually really low key. I think I've got 45 minutes to speak, so ask them as we go. If it's something that ventures over into classified territory, I will talk around what I can, and if I can, I'll just tell you that I can't answer that question. And I think we may get a couple of those. So to start with, like was mentioned, I am the Supervisory Special Agent of the Cyber Squad for the Birmingham Division. To sort of give you guys an idea of what the resources are for the Bureau, we cover from Tuscaloosa to the very northern part of Alabama. There are 10 cyber agents on my squad, so I supervise 10 agents. Sounds like a lot for this area, but with the amount of work that we have on Redstone Arsenal, it's overwhelming to us, and that obviously causes us to have to prioritize the things that we focus on. Always, Bureau's number one priority is going to be counterterrorism. There is a little bit of that in the cyber arena, not as much as you would think, but obviously the more platforms that are popping up online that allow for recruiting and radicalizing and things like that, the more of our resources that it takes. I say that to say it's the number one priority for the Bureau, but because of the industrial control systems and related type of technology that's used across the energy sector, there are a lot of terrorist-related organizations that would be interested in reaching out and doing something if they could. Thankfully, because of the military and the efforts of our colleagues across the country, it's pretty difficult for someone to get physical access now. We know you can kind of keep tabs on those folks pretty well. It's not easy for someone to get into the country and perpetrate a physical attack. But the problem is what we're going to talk about today, and that's the ability of this technology. While it's great and it's efficient and it makes us all a lot more profitable, it also allows someone on the other side of the world to be able to perpetrate an attack, make something blow up, or cause mayhem to whatever sector it is. Obviously, this one being focused on the energy sector. So, like I said, we've got 10 agents. Our main focus here is national security. We have the arsenal sitting here. There are lots of workforce there. We also do criminal cyber hacking cases as well. I would break it down that, you know, in the course of a 12-month cycle, we probably do 5% terrorism work, and that's just on an as-it-pops-up basis. 80% of what we do is going to be national security, counterintelligence type investigations in cyber, and then 10 to 15% will be the criminal stuff. We're going to talk about both today, criminal and national security, because both affect your sector. So the threats to energy sector may extend beyond the threats that we mentioned here. However, these are the ones that we're seeing most commonly. And the first thing I will kind of want to hint at or talk about is we do, unfortunately, a lot of what we call victim notifications. So that's where someone has been compromised. Either myself or one of the agents on our squad will go out. It's typically going to be a meeting with the CIO, the CEO, and one or more attorneys at the company. And we, from whatever means it is that we know that you've been compromised, we'll notify you of the compromise. We can't help you remediate your network, but we can give pointers as to things that we know or provide indicators that will help you find the issue, but it will always be up to the company to decide the best way forward. The biggest thing we run across, and so that's the reason why we like to get out and do all these engagements ahead of time, is that most people, the initial reaction is not me, or that can't happen in my network. You know, we have the greatest network security folks in the industry that work for us. It's not possible. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you have a device that's connected to the internet, I don't care how good your security people are, it's vulnerable. And if the right people or the right nation state actors want to get access to your network and they devote enough time and resources to it, they will get access to your network. So it's not a matter of if, but when. And so we would like to get out and kind of talk about these things. The other thing I like to throw out right at the beginning along with that, I'm going to give you some specific examples and tell you about things that we're seeing right now. But here's the problem, right? You can take the best threat indicators that we know of today, and block all the traffic out there that's bad, or prevent every bad actor that is trying to get into your network from getting into your network. But don't think that they don't have a day job, which is to penetrate your network, just like we all have day jobs. And if you prevent them today, even if you could stop every threat out there, which is not possible, but even if we could do that, they're not going to say, oh, you got me, I'm going to go find a new career path. No, they're going to start looking at another way to penetrate your network, whether that's through, human interaction, technical means, whatever it is. If something is not working, they're not giving up. They're going to figure out another way in. That's just the nature of the environment that we all operate in now. And so it's important that you understand that ahead of time. Don't think that it's not going to be me or it can't be me, especially in the energy sector. It's critical to the country. If people can wipe out power, that has mass implications across the military, law enforcement, obviously the general population. So if those things are true, and we all know that they're true, then your sector is a very, very big target. So what are some of the things that are out there? Some of the actors, let's start there. Insider threat, right? We've seen some of that, and it's typically somebody that's disgruntled, they're fired, or you've hired someone that for whatever reasons they have an ideological belief that they want to do something. Because of the fact that they have access to your network, it makes it pretty easy for someone like that to do something destructive or to plant malware. So we've seen things with thumb drives being put into systems and then malware being implanted on systems through insiders. The big one, nation-state actors. Can't get too deep into that, but let's just say that exactly what I was saying a second ago is true, in that the energy sector is a very, very large target, and there are countries and governments out there who are they're pushing lots of resources, time, money to finding out holes, vulnerabilities, things like that in your network. The reason this one is really, really big for us, we do a lot of national security work, like I mentioned before. It's a lot of data exfiltration. In your sector, our fear, and we've not seen a lot of it, is that most of the time why we can see these things or why we can find these things, and I say we as the U.S. government as a whole, is because data exfiltration is noisy and it's pretty easy to find. In your sector, if someone is using this as a military strategy, let's say, they're not going to steal your data. They don't really have an interest in stealing your data. They have an interest in getting a foothold in your network and keeping it, so that if the time ever comes that conflict happens with that nation, they have a backdoor or an implant, whatever it is technically that they can use. The chances of you finding it are not going to be very good, based off of what we see in our counterintelligence investigations, where every time we go out and do an investigation and notify someone, they're not standing there saying, oh, you know what, we knew exactly what you're talking about, we've already caught it, we've got it fixed. That never happens. It's always, how do you know that this is us? That's not our data. And then we give them their data, and it is their data. So if these actors have the capability to do it to the largest contractors in the country with some of the most sophisticated network engineers in the country, they can do it to you too. The fear, though, is that it's not seen, and it would never be seen until a conflict happens. And so we like to kind of get that out there to get you, I don't know exactly what the level is of the audience, if it's really, really technical people, really high-level executive types, but that's important to be talking about across your organization because that threat is real, and the repercussions of that could be devastating if that day ever comes. Hacktivists are another one. So we have the hacktivist criminal type sect. They are very, very powerful. It's not been seen quite as much in the energy sector, but across other sectors, especially banking. The power of the internet now it's so powerful that you can have 18-year-olds that are running botnets. They're really, really, so we've had, everybody knows several of these. I can't really mention a lot of company names, but you've seen a lot of this, our one percenters. Let's just kind of go down that route. So the people that are, they believe that they're outcasts to our society, or that there are tons of people that have too much money in our society, those type of groups that everybody's seen on the news, they have the ability to recruit people just like a terrorist does. And so we've seen time and time again where they use sophisticated technology, they're not in the United States of America, and they recruit kids, for lack of a better term, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds who are pretty vulnerable at the time. They're looking for something to be a part of. They feel like they're kind of on the outside. So whatever bank it is that they feel like has all this money they want to do something about, this has gone on for multiple years now, where they download a piece of software that was created outside of the United States of America, and at the right date and time, whoever the person is that they're engaging with in these forums gives them an IP address and says, put this IP address in your software and click go. They name it cool things. So one was called the low orbit ion cannon. It's silly, but that's what the name of this tool was. And you put the IP address in, and it's the IP address for the web servers of a major bank, the largest in the country, one of the largest, right? But you have thousands of people who have downloaded this piece of software, and they're all hitting that web server. What do you think happens to their web server? Yep. That's a huge problem with what. Right. Hopefully you don't use it. If you use it, we'll be knocking on your door soon. Please don't use it. So just like you're saying, it would kind of be skipping a little bit ahead, but it's a big trend across cyber is exactly what he's saying. So 10, 15 years ago, you literally had to have technical skills or a technical skill set to write this type of software, or you at least had to know the right person. But now, because of the dark web, it's all professionalized. And so you can go out there, you can either hire someone to do whatever it is you want them to do, or buy these types of tools that are out there and easily available. So it just makes it literally to where a 16-year-old, and that happens regularly, where we go knock on the door because someone is using these tools, and the mom answers the door. She has no idea that her 16-year-old son is doing these type of things, and he's literally hitting a company that you would think could never be brought down. And it's done by a 16-year-old in Huntsville. That's the environment that we live in. So it's again, kind of a shift of our mindset. The internet's great, all this technology is great, it makes us all a lot more productive, but there's also a downside to it, and it makes us all a lot more vulnerable. So for the energy sector, what are we seeing being targeted? Obviously, your industrial control systems. I've touched on this before, but you know that's again the most dangerous threat, and it's because of what those control systems are running. Things can be blown up, things can be again, this is kind of hard to talk around with not being able to talk in a classified setting, but there are things that actors can do that you will never know what's going on your system. Your system's going to read like it's fine, and it's going to be messing up whatever the devices are that they control, but it's not going to do it at a rate that you say, oh my God, you know, the sky is falling. It's going to be at a failure rate that's just slightly more than what you normally would see. But over the course of 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, all of your infrastructure is down, or you're running at such a degraded capability that you're ineffective. Those are the type of attacks that you'll see perpetrated now. We're worried that, again, because of the military connotations to this, that could just be recon or testing or figuring out what will work or what won't work if we do need to hit that button and take everything down at one shot. So the industrial control systems are obviously the biggest threat in your arena. Some other things that you don't really think about, though, are your intellectual property. So that is going to be appealing, just like we see in our national security investigations and on the criminal side. You spend all of this money and time developing whatever that specialized widget is or whatever specialized technology that you have. Well, you don't just compete anymore on a national scale, you compete on a global scale. And so if I'm in another country, why would I waste $10 million that you spent in research and development when I can just hack your network and get somebody to click an email and steal what you did? That shortens my learning curve. Go ahead. Right. It is, yeah. It's a huge problem.
Expose those vulnerable points, you know. I talk loud. Oh, I'm sorry, but you know, I am identifying mission critical buildings and weak points, giving the dude a plan, you know, basically. But it's out there.
It is, and so part of that issue, right, is money, and we see it with the defense contracting base, with the banking industry. The power industry, whatever it is, right? Everybody's in business at the end of the day to make money. And it's very hard, especially on our end, to go out and say, hey, here are all these things that are wrong, but it's going to cost you $3 million to fix it. most companies are not going to put $3 million towards that when it's going to be a hit on the bottom line until something happens. And then when something happens, the fix isn't going to cost you $3 million, it's going to cost you 30. And that's sort of the environment that we're in. And it always comes down to a business decision, right? And we can't make that decision. That's kind of a lawmaker, very high level policy type of a thing where you have industry regulations or, those type of things to force companies to do, quote unquote, the right thing. But again, at the end of the day, it's always going to come down to the bottom line.
What's insurance? Because never sold, not on payback, and there's no really quantifiable thing.
Right.
Other than some voices of big numbers, right?
Yep. Big issue though, right? Big problem. So another factor, so you guys sit in an interesting industry in that our defense contracting base is similar. You have to worry about the national security threat and the criminal threat. And we see the criminal threat a ton. And like I told you before, we've got 10 agents, so we've got to prioritize what we work. We have very, very high thresholds on the criminal side of what we will work. We're talking $50,000, $100,000 worth of loss, depending on who the victim is, before we can even do anything. So there are a bunch of these criminal type of ransomware attacks, business email compromises, those type of things that you're all susceptible to, that they fall between the cracks because we can't have locals working it. They don't have the jurisdiction. And then there's just so many FBI agents that work cyber that you don't have enough bodies to go around. We're working on standing up task forces. This was a big push 10 or 15 years ago with child pornography. The Bureau used to do that. We don't do child pornography anymore at all. We stood up a lot of the threat centers where the undercovers are run out of. We worked hand in hand with a bunch of locals, trained them how to use our systems, got them to work with the U.S. Attorney's Office so they're using federal charges, and now that sort of has been outsourced, that type of work, to state and locals, and that's sort of the vision of where the Bureau is trying to go now with a lot of this criminal work as well. We have limited resources. A lot of sheriff's offices or police departments have more resources. They just don't have the reach, the federal reach of the Bureau, and then they don't have the access to our legal attaché offices across the world to be able to work with some countries, obviously not all, but some, to actually prosecute the actors that are doing this stuff. That stuff is literally rampant. Don't raise your hands if you've been hit by that, but we have been inundated with ransomware attacks. It's ransomware attacks and business email compromises. Business email compromises mainly targeting real estate transactions. So if you're buying a house, if you're in the middle of doing that, what's happening is the closing or title companies, the closing attorney or title company, they've been compromised, their email accounts have been compromised, and the actors, this is consistent across every threat vector. So if it's national security, criminal, whatever, they're way more patient than you would think they would be. We've seen them sit and wait for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months for the right time to act, or romance scams where they're engaging with someone online to get this person to fall in love with them, and that recruitment and cultivation literally takes a year or 2 years. But eventually the person falls in love with them, and then of course when they feel like they've gotten them to that point, then some crazy situation is going to happen where they need money. And we've had people victimized to the tune of over $1 million in those type of scams. But who wouldn't work or cultivate someone for a year or a year and a half if you knew in the end there was going to be this $750,000 or $1 million payoff? That's the type of stuff that goes on. And so these actors literally sit on a network and watch. And when they see these titles, they don't want the $10,000 or $20,000 down payment. They want the $200,000 down payment. And so what they do is they'll sit and watch, and they wait for a day that they know, because they're going to see email traffic go back and forth leading up to the day of closing. And they're going to say, this guy's pushing 200,000 over, this one's pushing 75, this one's pushing 300, whatever it is. Today's a big day, today's the day. So what they do is they pretend to be that person, the closing attorney. They email the person that's buying the house, that's got the down payment. Those people in a real estate transaction never meet. You don't ever meet that person until the day you walk in to close. I've spoken to the real estate, North Alabama Association of Realtors about this, because in the end, the quick fix is the realtor's job. They have to communicate. But this is going on rampantly where they get an email with wiring instructions. It's exactly what you would expect to happen, and you wire the money, and nothing happens. And then 3 days later, you show up to closing, and the closing attorney says, "Where's your check?" And you say, "I sent you $200,000 3 days ago." And they start looking, and the wiring instructions were wrong, and that email account had been compromised. That type of stuff is going on rampant right now. Not a specific vector in your line of business, but those business email compromises, typically that's what's going to happen. Somebody's email system is going to be compromised, or somebody's email system is going to be spoofed. We all live in an age where all of our information is on the internet. I could probably go to each one of your companies, especially for your executives, and look up their bio, and it's going to have enough information in there about them, including their phone number and their email address, that you could pretend to be that person and pull it off in a convincing manner. What winds up happening is somebody that's in payroll or finance that never hears from the CEO gets an urgent email from the CEO saying, send money to, I'm going on vacation, I'm about to be out of town, we've got this vendor that's not been paid in 60 days, I need you to send $150,000 to this account. That person who the CEO never talks to is going to send that wire, unless they've heard that this is going on and the company talks about it and the CEO gets up in front of everyone and says, I would never do that. And so it's a cultural thing where they know that's not going to happen. But again, that's all education and training and us getting out and doing these type of engagements to sort of spread the word. So those are things that, while they're not energy sector specific, they're things that for sure you would be impacted by. So what are some of the things that are issues specifically related to ICS? Typically, an ICS system is something that is a legacy system that was built with security, like as an afterthought, if at all, right? They just are not out there. It's meant to set and forget and to just run, which creates another issue that I'll touch on in a second. The other thing is sort of like you were mentioning before, that professionalization of the underground or the dark web, as we like to call it. There's all kinds of published vulnerabilities for servers, whatever operating system you run on your home computer, they're all out there. And ICS vulnerabilities are out there. Some you have to pay for, but some are just public knowledge. So again, that makes it easy for someone to execute an attack without even doing a lot of legwork. So the big part about this commercialization is that it's why you got to patch and keep your systems up to date. So there are Metasploit, Nessus, there's some other ones that I can't really mention, but let's just say they're like that. So if you know what that is, these are prepackaged software kits that you can get off the internet. They're free. You download that and you know the IP address of the web server, or if it's at your home, your externally facing IP address of whoever this person is you want to target, and you run it against that IP address. And it's going to scan that computer, and it's going to give you a report back and say, here is the operating system, here is the patch level, here is everything running on it, oh, and here are all the vulnerabilities. And not only does it tell you what all the vulnerabilities are, it has the majority of those tools already preloaded in. So you just pick which one do you want to deploy against it, and you use it, and it's literally easy enough for a 16-year-old to use, and it happens all the time. And so that's why you have to keep your systems up to date. I'd like to get up here and tell you that the majority of our work is, so high speed that it's 0 days and, things we've never seen before. That does happen. But even at the highest level, most sensitive national security investigation where, the most egregious secrets of our country are being stolen, 9 times out of 10, when we get called out for that, the system wasn't patched, somebody clicked a link. It is not because some never seen before 0 day was deployed. It was really, truly a mistake by whoever the person is that does security or patch management or whatever it is for that system that was exploited. It's not often. And if you think about it, it doesn't make business sense for whether it's a nation state or a hacking group that's well-funded. Why would you use your 0 day when I can get away with using Metasploit against you? That's stuff that's widely known. It helps me hide in the noise. When the FBI comes and looks at it, they may not even know initially that it's a nation-state actor, but your system wasn't patched, and so it was open to vulnerability. I mean, we harp on that over and over and over again. If it's a technical crowd, you're going to understand that. But if it's not, those things are annoying, right? You get that bubble that pops up. Do you want to install this right now? If you click it, you're going to have to reboot your computer. You're probably going to be down 15 or 20 minutes, and you really got to finish that proposal that you're working on, or you really got to send that email that you're working on right now, and so you click later. And then later winds up being 3 months or 6 months or never, and then your system gets popped. The reason those patches and those updates come out is because a known vulnerability has been identified by that software manufacturer, and they're pushing that out to fix it. And it is. Yep. That's another big problem out there. So there are ICS-related things. So Stuxnet is one of them. There's several. But it's rampant across some of the nation-state actors. once a tool is developed that's effective and it's out in the wild, that doesn't prevent any other actor from getting that tool. So Stuxnet's a prime example of that. That is a deployment vector. The payload was very, very specific, directed towards a specific Siemens controller, right? But what's to stop someone else from getting that very, very effective deployment method and just changing the payload to be whatever they need it to be? So yeah, that's a huge problem that we see over and over again, where these things that are known to be effective, these tools, they're recycled and used for other purposes. So that is dangerous. So here's another big thing in your industry, right? We're talking about patches. People don't like to patch ICS systems because they're worried about the system going down or not working right once they patch it. Some of these systems have been working for 30, 40, 50 years, and they've never been touched. And they run things that are mission critical. And so are you going to go convince your CEO that, hey, we need to put this patch on because Scott Pierre told me that some bad company or bad country's trying to get us? You know, they're probably going to laugh at you. But that is it's a learning, I guess, it's a learning lesson that it's an issue. We have to get there. If these systems are not patched, they're vulnerable. Those patches are out there again for a reason. So we have to get culturally around the fact that we have to do these things to protect ourselves and really to protect the country. There are also the ICS patches and upgrading, especially these very old legacy systems, super, super expensive. And that again comes down to a business decision. You know, are we willing to take production offline because 40 years ago when we put this device online, we never thought we'd be at the day where we have to patch this thing and it has to go down or it has to reboot, and that's going to take us down for 2 hours or 4 hours, whatever it is. Those are very difficult decisions, again, business decisions, but very, very critical. Another big one, supply chain vulnerabilities. Any of you guys out there thinking about that, like who we're buying from and what we're buying, those type of things? So part of, again, that very first spiel about not me, right? The devil's real. Most people don't think that's real, but it is. This is another piece of that. So even though it seems like it's a great business deal or we're being offered, you know, twice what we really should be offered for this property that's the last mile of our segment, or man, you know, this router system or this batch of PCs that we bought, you know, HP wants, you know, 3 times what this other company that's owned by the Chinese government wants. And they're cutting us this great deal and we're going to buy it. There's a reason for that, right? And don't think, I wouldn't have a job if those countries were not out there actively trying to do these things. So it's there. I can't go into very, very deep detail about that, but that's something that you really, really have to think about. You know, it'd be difficult for a foreign government to purchase infrastructure from TVA, but probably not so difficult to purchase it from, you know, I don't want to say a specific name, but a small municipality in our AOR, right, in this area. They could do that, and they probably would go in and offer a lot of money, and it would, you know, be publicized as great for the community and all these type of things. Well, now it's this big multinational corporation that owns it, and oh, by the way, you didn't know that the people who really own it are a nation that is not good for the U.S., let's say. The other big thing is supply chain can be exploited through smaller vendors. So we all have trusted relationships across our enterprise. You may be rock solid. You may already be thinking about your supply chain, but the smaller mom and pop shop or really small business that you do business with that has access to your network or that sends you emails all the time or whatever it is, they may not be thinking about those things. And when that great deal comes along, they're going to jump all over it because it's even more important to their economics. That's an easy way to be exploited. It's also an easy way for cyber actors to exploit you as well, as through trusted relationships where your network security may be up to speed, you may be doing all of those patches and system updates and all that type of stuff, but your trusted vendor who is not has access to your network. We don't really think about that. That happens a lot. We see that a lot. So what are some of the specific examples that we've seen at least recently or somewhat recently? So in Triton Trisis, anybody know what that is or have heard about that? So June 2017, a piece of malware hit a petrochemical plant in Saudi Arabia. A subsequent outage occurred in August, so it took a couple months for it to work its way all the way through the system. This malware was designed to infiltrate the safety information or safety instrument systems that allowed the plant to shut safely down. It was discovered by random chance by a systems engineer. They weren't looking for it. They had no idea it was there. They just happened to be doing an update, and one of the systems engineers was sharp enough to see it and realize there was a problem. The biggest issue with this is that had that malware been allowed to execute, it would have caused an explosion at this petrochemical plant in Saudi Arabia. I can't mention attribution on that one, but obviously that's just sort of a proof of concept. This is real. These things happen. They happen all over the world, and it's an issue that could affect every one of you. So a nation-state example, there was a multi-stage intrusion campaign by nation-state actors against a small commercial facility. They staged malware, they conducted spear phishing attacks, they gained remote access into some energy sector networks. They conducted recon, they moved laterally in the network and collected information on the SCADA systems. This happened, this has been ongoing since at least March of 2016. What they did, though, is exactly what I talked about a second ago. They exploited a trusted relationship. So it was a staged attack. They used a staging victim and then the intended target. The staging victim's email server was exploited. And because that staging victim is someone the larger company would expect to get emails from, it was very, very easy to spearfish that larger company. Once the larger company was spearphished, they obviously were able to get a foothold in their network. Malware was put all over the network. These were, again, I can't say what country it is, but it's a country that is obviously a serious concern to the United States, so a very big problem for us. So another one that happened, this I think was like 2011 or 2012, but it's pretty interesting, and it kind of goes to that hacktivist, activist type of group. The DHS Fusion Center, so Bureau and DHS worked the ICS threat jointly. We kind of have differing policy and differing directives, but we have to work this jointly. They put out an IAR that alleged there was an intrusion in a municipal water facility. They named it. They said what it was. I can't name it. We can't name victims, so that's why I'm talking around a lot of this stuff. They were worried that a SCADA system was hit by a Russian IP address. So great on them, right? They're doing the kind of monitoring that you really need to be doing and being aware of. They saw an IP come from Russia. They were worried about it. They did an IAR. That was picked up by the news media and pushed out all over the news. The Bureau went in with DHS. They responded. They did the investigation, and they came to the conclusion that it was accessed by an IP address in Russia, but it was by a contractor, so a legitimate contractor for that piece of ICS SCADA equipment. And they had a pump failure that was just coincidental. But most of us that live in this world don't believe in coincidence, so you got to prove that negative, right? And it literally was a pump that had failed for a natural reason, but it just happened to fail right around the time they see these Russian IPs hitting their network. So it gets a lot of publicity. The U.S. government, so FBI, DHS, we issue a joint statement that's out in the news that says that was not a real attack. We figured out what happened. Nothing to worry about. Well, there's this hacker out there, Prof, I think was his name. He is offended by that because he's been in other municipality networks all over the country. And so he decides to, since we denied it, he decides to go out and post on Pastebin a specific municipality's water. He put the diagram out to exactly how they're configured. He said, hey, they've got a 3-letter password. It's the I think it was the normal, or no, I don't want to say what password it is. So it was a password that was known. He put all that on Pastebin and essentially says, I'm putting all this out there. This isn't illegal. Don't use it for nefarious purposes. Puts it all out there. The Bureau went behind and did an investigation, and we concluded that everything he put was accurate and it was legitimate. So again, we've disproved one, but in doing that and pushing out intelligence, what we're supposed to do, there is an actor out there who's a hacktivist that's like, oh, I'm mad. What they're saying is not true. This sector needs to get their stuff together. There's all these issues, and I'm going to show them. And he did. So again, a big problem in just that, especially at that point in time, 2010, 12 timeframe, not a lot of this was out there. It surely wasn't mainstream. And to see someone do that and know that they could take down a water facility is a big, big deal. We've already talked a little bit about this and answered some of those questions, but other threats that you guys would see are the ransomware, the business email compromise. Those are big ones. And again, if you get hit by it, the biggest way to combat the ransomware attack is to have backups. Again, unfortunately, let's say we've responded to 20 in the last year, just a nice round number. At least 15, probably closer to 17, did not have backups. And so I can't, as an FBI agent, tell you to pay a ransom, but what I can tell you is if you don't have backups, you're going to pay the ransom or your data's gone. And those ransoms are not cheap. What's that? Yep. Lots of people do not change it. See that all the time too. Yep. And so ransomware, though, can be multiple different vectors, but it's typically going to be a link that you get through an email. And so again, that's stuff that comes through training to be aware of. We saw one that I would have clicked. A business, a small business, let's say, put an ad out on multiple different online venues for, I forget what the position was, but they were trying to hire someone. They got a response back with a resume, and that resume, when you clicked it, was ransomware. And it locked their entire system. And this was the person that owned the company that clicked it because they're doing the hiring. And so that's one that, again, this is the level that these actors will go to. There's not many people that would not have clicked that. I mean, if you're like on your toes, you may have scanned that attachment and caught it. But if you're expecting that thing back, whatever it is, you're going to click it, and they're going to get you. And so again, if you have backups, it's going to be a pain because it's going to take a day or two to decrypt all your data, depending on how much data it encrypts. But at least you can decrypt it, or you can just start over. If you don't, you got to pay, and they don't always decrypt your data. Usually they do. It's obviously a bad business model if you don't decrypt. You know, if that happens a few times, people will get wind of it and they'll just stop paying. But if you don't have backups, you're in trouble. And then you got to go make a business decision to pay 20 grand or 30 grand or 50 grand in ransom to get your data back. So that's a big one, and it can easily hit any business in here. So what are some of the things that you can do? So business considerations. Obviously, security culture is big. You got to start talking about these things. You got to have trainings with your employees to explain, you know, that we can have the best security in the world. The human element is the one thing you can't control. Somebody's always going to click. And the only way you can prevent people from clicking, you're never going to get everybody. But if we have ongoing discussions about it, you know, once every quarter, once every 6 months, whatever it is, at least you're keeping it at the front of people's mind. And maybe right after you talk to them, that's the day that email comes in and they don't click it, and it doesn't cost you $50,000. Training, creating policies. There's some companies out there that we deal with that if you click the link and cause them damage, they will fire you. That's pretty drastic, but it's happening. And so I'm not saying that's what you should do or shouldn't do, but we have come across companies where they have implemented policies like that. It's zero tolerance. And so people are still going to click it, I'm sure. But what's really going to get difficult is when it's the CEO that clicks it, and then they got to figure out, what do we do? What do we do about this policy now? So here's another one that we see, again, not mentioning specific people or businesses here, but we're working towards being a lot more efficient, a lot more effective. And so you have to realize and operate in the environment that every single device that you connect to your network, doesn't matter what it is. If it connects to the internet, that is another entry point into your network. It doesn't matter how insignificant it is. So there are several power companies out there that are working towards, some of them have already deployed it all over, the ability to put devices that are internet connected at the house to manage the meter. And you can cut power off at the house, right? We can do this. Well, a lot of those same companies, because it's efficient and it's effective, they dual home that capability with the outside or externally facing bill payment capability that your customers use to pay their bills online. It makes sense, right, to have both of those housed. It's efficient. If they don't pay their bill, the server knows, it automatically can cut it off. Well, guess what? If you've got that thing externally facing for all your customers to be able to pay their bills, it's also vulnerable to being hit by an attacker, and now they have the ability to cut off power to whoever they want to cut off power to. So those are things that you just really have to think about as you deploy this technology. What could be those downstream impacts? And the issue is, just like I told you at the beginning, it's not the stuff that I'm reading to you right now. We can fix that. We can tighten that up. We absolutely have to. But it's those things that you're doing, you know, you're innovating and you're deploying all this new technology, and you got to think, okay, you got to. So I have friends that are in the military, and they'll tell, like, their thing is, you know, to catch a pirate, you got to be a pirate. And so somebody's got to be thinking like a pirate that's working for you to help you head these things off at the pass, because you don't want to be patient zero with this brand new technology that you put on your network, and now someone has been able to exploit that for either monetary reasons or, God forbid, national security reasons. Anybody familiar with the Vegas incident with the aquarium? So a few people. So can't name the exact casino, but let's say there's a casino who there was sensors put in the aquarium in their lobby, and those sensors were connected to a PC, and so they, I think they were measuring like water clarity, temperature, maybe like the acidity, but they were connected to the internet. Well, a hacker figured out how to use those devices, they were wireless, how to connect through those into that computer. That computer is connected to the network. He then moves laterally through their network, gets to the high roller database for that casino and exfiltrates it, steals it. And so he's got all the PII for the high rollers of this casino through a temperature device in an aquarium. And so that is the type of level that you got to be thinking about. The Internet of Things is all over, right? We're putting it on our door and on our locks and our washing machines and dishwashers and everything, right? Every single one of those things is a potential vulnerability. There have been U.S. government agencies, let's say, national security agencies, that have bought next generation devices, whatever it is, and they've spent lots of money on those things, and they've had to say, wait, we can't have this in our building because it has capabilities that we didn't realize it had capabilities to do, and it's got to go. So those are things that you always have to be cognizant of and thinking about. The problem's only going to get bigger, and it's the world we live in. So engaging with us, we obviously are out doing a lot of these engagements all the time. I do them, our counterintelligence squad does them, our JTTFs or our counterterrorism folks do them. We're out there, we want to form partnerships. I would like to have a relationship and know every head of every company in this area so that if something does happen, it's not the first time that we've ever spoken, and we can kind of talk about what your network looks like and the things we would be interested in an investigation and obviously helping you. We can't see everything that happens in cyberspace. It's too big. I've told you several times, we got 10 agents. There's no way we can do that. We have to have your help. So when you see things that look out of the ordinary or things that don't feel right, absolutely give us a call. And hopefully that call happens before the incident, not after the incident. Some of the resources that we have, so we have cyber task forces. We have one here. We've got quite a few members. I think we're up to like 15 or 16. Other government agencies and then several police officers around the area are members of that task force. We've got the NCI-JTF, so that's in Pittsburgh, and it's a multi-agency, so it's basically a whole of government coordination and integration piece. So they're doing information sharing, trying to take these incidents that we see, figure out what happened, and then push that intelligence back out to whatever industry or component that could use it. CyWatch is our 24/7 monitoring system. That is a command center. I get a CyWatch notification every morning, and it tells us what happened the last 24-hour cycle, and it tells you what field offices are impacted. It creates a lot of phone calls, unfortunately. The Internet Crime Complaint Center, that's where our external facing component is for you guys to enter in complaints. So it's ic3.gov. If things happen, that's the first place that you want to go. So I would go there first, enter in whatever happened to you, and then call your local field office. So if you're local to the Huntsville area, call the FBI Huntsville field office, and they will transfer you to the cyber squad. We have cyber assistant legal attaches. That's a big thing for us, and part of why investigations sort of stall at the local level, but we're able to at least make some headway. We have FBI agents that sit all over the country. I don't know the exact number now because they change a lot, but most every country we have an FBI agent sitting in an embassy that is engaging and doing liaison work with the local authorities in that country. Now, I'd be lying to you if I told you we have success everywhere we are, because that's not true. There are a lot of governments that are hostile to the United States of America, and they will not work with us. But quite a few are. Nigeria is a big one. That's where a lot of this cyber crime type stuff happens. And we've been able to, through diplomatic means and just building relationships with their legal authorities, to establish some relationships there where there's some headway being made in some of these cases, because a lot of money that's stolen in the United States through these schemes flows to Nigeria. So we have agents over there. They're literally there every day working with the Nigerian authorities. They get to know that person. They know their name. They know about their family, all of those type of things. They work together on a daily basis. That's helping us make inroads. That's something that we can leverage in a lot of these instances. We have InfraGuard, so that's our private-public partnership. I don't know if any of you guys are members of that. There's quite a few people in the community that are. We push out information and intelligence that's unclassified to that group, and there are regular meetings with speakers. They get speakers from the community. Sometimes it's FBI speakers as well. Then we have cyber action teams. They're really good. It's hand-picked FBI agents from across the country that They're responsible for a specific region of the country, and they respond. You don't ever want to meet them, because if you meet them, you're having a really, really bad day. They deploy them on an as-needed basis, and it's typically for the largest incidents, the things that you see all over the news, that they go and they assist. But that's pretty much the resources that we have, and we're right on the 145 time limit. Are there any questions about anything that I've said so far? There's a lot that we don't know, but there's also a lot that we know that I can't tell you.
If you'll indulge me for a second, apparently every 6 months somebody in Africa dies and you give all their money to me. So and it just seems, honestly speaking, how often does that really work? How much money really does go from the United States to that type of a phishing scam?
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Every year?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So what I'm understanding you're saying is that 21st century sleeper cell is a little snippet of malicious code buried deep in a piece of firmware update.
Yes.
And so right now, the way a current binary system is, if you are going to move to a modern computing environment, will that make detecting things easier or harder?
I think it would make it so. I did not do that. So I would think it's probably going to even the playing field. So artificial intelligence is another big one, right? Whoever has the best artificial intelligence to start with is going to win. But eventually that playing field will get leveled. So yes, it's going to be a problem to start with because people are going to have access to technology that other people don't have. So if you've got it and the bad guys don't, yes, you can detect whatever they've got in your network because it's not up to us to figure it out. It's up to machines that are thousands of times more efficient, right? But once they get to that level as well, they're going to be able to use those same machines to figure out ways to defeat, because it's always going to be you put up your wall, your fence, whatever you're doing to protect yourself, and then they're going to find ways to go under it, around it, through it, whatever it is, or to get you to open up the gate like you're talking about in Africa, let you in. That type of give and take is always going to happen. But that, again, is, I think, in this sector, that is the thing, is that we can see the exfil and we can see the indicators in all the other industries, but it just doesn't make sense in the energy sector. If I'm in your network, I don't really care to see all your data. Yeah, if we're going to bid against each other, I might steal your emails to kind of know what you're talking about and what you're talking about bidding. But your IP is not quite as important as that foothold, because that foothold allows me to do something in the case of a conflict down the road, and I don't ever want you to know it's there. And that's the fear. The fear is that because of the, let's say, the scope of what we've seen across the rest of the country in places that you would think have the best network security out there, we see that because it's noisy. We don't see it as much in the energy sector, and the fear is not because they're not doing it, it's because it's not noisy. Nothing's happening other than things are being staged for future use. Go ahead.
Maybe you can't say, or maybe it's just a yes, no. But in other types of conflicts, in cyber conflict, are we ever going on offense, like with anti-missile technology, for instance, in DoD, you're tracked by an enemy missile, you send out, jamming, anti-missile aircraft, go find that, ground air missiles and go back on offense. Are we doing anything like that? To go after the malware producers and things like that, even if it's only in the cyber space?
Not so much at the producer level, but let's just say, yes, the U.S. government does play offense. The problem is, though, if you think about it, for the military conflict, it's a great thing. But for a lot of the IP and the data theft that's going on, the places that we would do something like that in, who's winning that exchange, right? If you're getting, our most treasured secrets or military technologies, we've got the best stuff in the world. And so who's winning, right?
I think that from a countermeasure to shut it down.
So We try to do that all the time. So let's just talk, not national security, but like on a criminal side. We've got these actors doing these things. We know exactly who they are. We are heavily restricted by the U.S. Attorney's Office or the law on the things that we can do. And that's why it's always this huge asymmetry, because they don't have to play by any rules. We have, volumes of laws that restrict what we're doing. And cyber is a very, very new field, let's say, in the legal environment. There's not a lot of law surrounding it. And so the attorneys that we deal with are very, very cautious because they don't want to tread the wrong ground and kind of set precedent. So yeah, it's tough. We do try to do that. I mean, there's all kinds of ideas of things we could do to really, really disrupt them. And unfortunately, a lot of those get shut down.
We have situations with all our research centers across the southeast where we're looking at adding smart meters, but because they're internet protocol based, we have security concerns with that data transmission, either to give us information to see controls back to it. Is there any kind of protocol or anything that helps provide some security to that?
So, well, what are you running encryption or anything like that on those data transmissions, or no?
I don't go that far into it.
Okay.
I pick it up. My coworker at the office, who's the energy manager, seems to be more involved in it than I am.
Yeah. If it's got encryption on it, if it's strong enough, you'll be fine for now. Obviously, every country in the world is running huge supercomputer labs, and they're trying to crack that type of stuff, and eventually they will be able to. I don't know when that will happen. It might be 20 years from now. But yeah, if you're running encryption, that's the best you can do. The real fear, though, isn't actually like accessing the data. It's the ability to access the device. If I can get on that device and control that device and cut the power off at the house, I don't want to cut one house off, but if I have access to your server that all those devices communicate with, I can cut all of them off. And so why hack TVA if I can just hack you, and I've got the last mile, and I've got 50,000 people? If I cut power off for all of them, it's going to cause some serious problems.
With headquarters, I'm in Pierre, and we're facing one of these issues. We're at a policy and planning and oversight of safety, relations, all critical information. We operate in support of the management of the safety. But is there something from your office where you might be able to come out and sit and talk with some of us at headquarters and our management to kind of identify the types of things you're just talking about? This is one of the things you talk about is, the data by itself may not be that important, but if I can get into the meter, then what else can I get into?
Right.
And, very quickly build the POD is
Yep.
a classified conversation.
Yes.
But can you guys help support that?
Yeah, we can do that. I'll give you my card when I head out.
Okay. Thank you, Scott.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me.
Okay, we're getting ready for a break in network. I have one announcement before we go. Remember, at 2:15, we're back here for the panel, and also we have the breakout sessions where you had them this morning, so let's remember that. The one announcement is on April 6th, which is the beginning of Earth Week, there will be an ribbon cutting to the greenway behind the Space and Rocket Center, and we just wanted to keep that before you. You'll probably hear it again, so let's be reminded of that. Now let's go have a little break, do a little networking.